I walked out of my daughter's wedding in front of 200 guests. Not because I was emotional, not because I couldn't handle it. I walked out because the seat I was given, after paying $85,000, was in the back corner, while my ex-husband's new wife sat at the head table, pretending to be the mother of the bride. But before I tell you how I got my revenge, let me take you back to that morning. My name is Diane Brennan, and I'm 62 years old. The morning of my daughter's wedding, I woke up at 6, the way I had for the past 30 years. Coffee first. Black, no sugar, brewed in the same machine I'd bought when Nicole was in middle school. Then a walk around the neighborhood, 40 minutes, the same route every morning. It was the kind of routine that kept me sane, the kind of predictability I'd built my life on. That morning, though, the routine felt hollow. I walked past the park where I used to take Nicole when she was little, past the grocery store where we'd shop together on Saturdays. All those small, unremarkable moments that had meant everything to me. I wondered if they had ever meant anything to her. When I got back to the house, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the receipts I'd kept in a folder. $85,000, paid in full, every invoice marked, complete. The venue, the flowers, the catering, the dress. I had written every check myself, watching the numbers climb higher and higher, telling myself it was what mothers do. Nicole had said, "Thanks, Mom," exactly once, in a text message 2 months ago. I told myself it was enough, that her happiness was what mattered. But even then, I knew something was wrong. The diamond necklace sat in its velvet box on my dresser, the clasp slightly tarnished from years in storage. I opened it and held it up to the morning light, watching the stones catch and scatter the sun. It smelled faintly of my mother's perfume, a scent I hadn't thought about in years. My hands trembled as I imagined placing it around Nicole's neck, the way my mother had placed it around mine. I had planned to give it to Nicole, something borrowed, something that connected us across 3 generations. Last week, I brought it to her apartment, my heart pounding as I opened the box. She glanced at it and smiled, but it wasn't the smile I remembered from when she was 8. "It's beautiful, Mom, really," she said, turning it over in her hands. But Cheryl's necklace just fits the aesthetic better. The word aesthetic hit me like a slap. Not "I love it" or "thank you," just aesthetic. I put the necklace back in my purse without another word, my hands shaking. On the drive home, I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, and my chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped a band around my ribs. I thought about my mother, the way she had smiled when she gave me that necklace on my wedding day. "One day, you'll pass this to your daughter," she had said. I had believed her. But maybe some traditions aren't meant to continue. Maybe some daughters don't want what their mothers offer. I didn't cry, not yet, because I still wanted to believe this was temporary. That, after the wedding, after the stress was over, we'd go back to normal. But deep down, I knew there was no normal to go back to. That morning, I put on my navy dress, simple but elegant. I looked at myself in the mirror and tried to see the woman I used to be. The one who built a business from nothing, who raised a daughter alone after the divorce. But all I saw was someone who had been saying yes for too long. My phone buzzed, a text from Nicole. "Mom, can you get there early? I need help." For a second, hope flickered in my chest like a match in the wind. Maybe she did need me after all. Maybe I had been wrong to worry. I texted back immediately. "Of course, sweetheart, I'll be there." To understand what happened at that wedding, you need to know what came before it. 28 years of choices I made alone, because there was no one else to make them. When Robert left, Nicole was 18 and heartbroken. She had come home from her first semester of college to find her father packing boxes, loading them into a moving truck while a woman I'd never met sat in his car, scrolling through her phone. That woman was Cheryl. Nicole crawled into my bed that night, 18 years old but feeling like a child again. She cried against my shoulder and whispered, "Promise me you'll never leave me like he did." I held her and said, "Never. I'll always be here." She believed me, because back then, I was still the person she trusted most. Robert didn't pay child support after the divorce, not consistently. His lawyer argued that Nicole was legally an adult, that there was no obligation. The judge agreed, so I paid for everything: tuition, housing, books, groceries. $120,000 over 4 years, spread across small checks and wire transfers that drained my savings account faster than I wanted to admit. The commercial properties my parents left me generated $18,000 a month in rent. Not a fortune, but steady. Reliable. After taxes and maintenance, I cleared about $12,000. Enough to live modestly, enough to support Nicole through college, enough to save for her future. But I didn't splurge, not on myself. My Honda Accord was 7 years old, paid off, still running fine. My house, a 3-bedroom in a quiet suburb, had been mortgage-free for a decade. I could have afforded more, but I didn't need more. What I needed was to make sure Nicole never had to struggle the way I did after the divorce. I told myself that being a good mother meant giving her choices. That if I provided enough, she'd never have to feel trapped, never have to settle. I thought that's what love looked like, making sure she had everything. The 3 office buildings my parents left me were all in the same part of town, a commercial district that had seen better days but was slowly coming back. One was a 2-story brick building near the old courthouse, leased to a law firm and a CPA. The second was a converted warehouse, now home to a graphic design studio and a tech startup. The third, the smallest, housed a cafe on the ground floor and a bookkeeping service upstairs. Twice a month I visited each property, walking through the hallways, checking on the tenants, making sure everything was in order. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was mine. My parents had built this, and I had kept it running. For Nicole, always for Nicole. When she graduated, she threw her arms around me and said, "Mom, I did it because of you." We took a photo together, her cap tilted, my smile genuine. That photo still sits on my mantle, a reminder that there was a time when my sacrifices mattered to her. A year later, she asked for help with a down payment on an apartment. $25,000. I sat at my kitchen table with the stack of documents in front of me, the pen heavy in my hand. Each signature felt like signing away a piece of myself. But I did it because that's what mothers do. And when she moved in, she sent me a photo of the living room with a caption, "Thank you for believing in me." I wanted to believe that was enough, that the gratitude would last. But it didn't. Robert remarried 3 years after our divorce. Nicole called me that afternoon, her voice tight and uncertain. "Mom, Dad's getting married again, to Cheryl." I sat down slowly, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. "How do you feel about that?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "I don't know," she said. "She's nice. She wants to meet you." I should have said no. I should have kept my distance, maintained the boundaries that divorce had already drawn. But I didn't, because I wanted to believe that we could all be adults about this. That Nicole's happiness mattered more than my pride. 2 weeks later, Cheryl showed up at a coffee shop where Nicole had arranged for us to meet. She was younger than me, maybe 50, with perfectly styled hair and a designer handbag that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She smiled warmly and extended her hand. "Diane, I've heard so much about you. I hope we can be friends." I shook her hand, keeping my expression neutral. "Of course. Nicole speaks highly of you." Cheryl ordered a latte and leaned forward, her voice warm and sincere. "Robert and I want Nicole to feel like she has 2 homes. I know I can never replace you, but I hope we can all be one big happy family. That's what's best for Nicole." The words were kind, the tone was gentle, but something about it felt rehearsed, like she had practiced this speech in the mirror before coming here. "That's kind of you," I said, stirring my coffee. Cheryl smiled again, and for a moment I wanted to believe her. But then she said, "If you ever need anything, just let me know. We're all family now. And I realized she wasn't asking me to be part of the family. She was telling me that I already was, on her terms. Over the next year, Nicole started spending more time with Cheryl. At first, it was small things. Brunches, shopping trips, coffee dates. Nicole would mention them casually like they were no big deal. Cheryl took me to this amazing boutique downtown. Cheryl knows this great spa. We went for facials. I told myself it was fine, that Nicole was allowed to have relationships with other people. But the frequency started to change. Once a month became twice a week, and the phone calls to me became shorter, more distracted. Hey, Mom, can I call you back? I'm with Cheryl right now. One evening, about 6 months after Robert's remarriage, I was scrolling through Instagram the way you do when you're trying to distract yourself from the silence of an empty house. I saw Nicole's name pop up in my feed. She had posted a photo. I tapped on it without thinking. The photo was of Nicole and Cheryl at brunch, both smiling, both holding mimosas. They looked happy. Close. The caption was short. Brunch with Mom Red Heart. I stared at the word Mom. Not Cheryl. Not my stepmom. Just Mom. I scrolled through the comments. Friends of Nicole's, people I didn't recognize, all saying things like, "You two are so cute together," and "Best mom-daughter duo." No one corrected them. Not even Nicole. I set the phone down on the table, my hands shaking. I thought about the last time Nicole had posted a photo of the two of us. I scrolled back through her feed, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year. Nothing. The last photo of me was from 2 years ago, buried under dozens of pictures of Cheryl. I wasn't being replaced. I had already been replaced. When Nicole got engaged, she called me from Cheryl's house. I could hear laughter in the background, champagne glasses clinking. "Mom, I'm engaged," she said, her voice bright and breathless. "David proposed last night, and I said yes." I felt my chest tighten, but I forced myself to smile, even though she couldn't see me. "Congratulations, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you." "Thanks, Mom. We're thinking a spring wedding, maybe at Ashford Estate." Cheryl found this amazing planner. Cheryl, already involved, already planning, already taking the role that should have been mine. "That sounds beautiful," I said. "Let me know if you need any help." "Of course, Mom. I'll keep you posted." She hung up, and I sat in the silence of my kitchen, staring at the phone. I wanted to be happy for her. I really did. But all I could think about was how Cheryl had been there when David proposed, how she had been the first person Nicole called, and I had been an afterthought. The wedding planning began in earnest 2 weeks later. Nicole sent me a group text with Cheryl, David's mother, and a wedding planner named Margot. The first message was a photo of 3 venue options, all stunning, all expensive. I replied, "They're all beautiful. When can we go see them?" Nicole's response came an hour later. "Oh, Mom, Cheryl and I already went. We put down a deposit on Ashford Estate." I stared at the message, my heart sinking. I typed back, "You didn't want me to come?" The reply was immediate. "You're so busy with your properties. I didn't want to bother you." I wanted to scream. I wasn't busy. I had been semi-retired for years, specifically so I could have more time with Nicole. But she didn't know that because she had stopped asking. A week later, I tried again. "Nicole, when is the dress fitting? I'd love to come with you." Her response came the next morning. "Cheryl and I already have an appointment scheduled, but I'll send you photos." She did send photos, dozens of them, all taken by Cheryl. Nicole in a lace gown, Nicole in a satin gown, Nicole laughing in front of the mirror. And in every single photo, Cheryl was there, adjusting the veil, holding the train, smiling like a proud mother. I saved the photos to my phone, but I didn't look at them again. It hurt too much. Trish and I had lunch at our usual spot, a small cafe downtown that made the best chicken salad in the county. We'd been meeting there once a month for the past 15 years, ever since we both retired from the real estate business. "So," Trish said, setting down her iced tea, "how's the wedding planning going?" I stirred my salad, avoiding her eyes. "Fine, Diane." Her voice was gentle but firm. "Talk to me." And I did. I told her about the dress fitting I wasn't invited to, the seating chart I wasn't consulted on, the way Cheryl had become the de facto mother of the bride. Trish listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "That's not fine," she said quietly. "And you know it." "She's just busy," I said, even though I didn't believe it. "It's a lot of stress, planning a wedding." Trish shook her head. "Stress doesn't erase 28 years, Diane. This is about respect, and she's not giving you any." I looked down at my plate, blinking back tears. "She's my daughter, Trish. What am I supposed to do?" "Set a boundary," Trish said firmly. "Tell her how you feel, and if she doesn't listen, walk away." I wanted to take her advice, I really did, but every time I thought about confronting Nicole, I remembered the promise I made when Robert left. "I'll always be here." And I had kept that promise, even when she stopped keeping hers. The invoices kept coming. Flowers, catering, photography, videography. I sat at my kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of me, the pen heavy in my hand. $25,000 for the venue. $35,000 for the food. $12,000 for the flowers. $8,000 for the dress. Each signature felt like signing away a piece of myself, but I did it anyway. Because that's what mothers do. When I finished, I stacked the checks neatly and slid them into envelopes. The paper rustled as I sealed each one, and I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the otherwise silent house. I mailed them the next morning, and Nicole sent a text 2 days later. "Got the checks, Mom. Thank you so much. You're the best." I stared at the message for a long time, waiting for something more. An invitation to help with the final details, a phone call to talk about the ceremony, anything that would make me feel like I mattered. But nothing came. Just, "You're the best," followed by radio silence. The drive to Ashford Estate took 40 minutes, winding roads through hills and trees. The venue was beautiful, a converted mansion with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. I had chosen it from the brochure Nicole sent me, the only choice she let me make. When I walked into the bridal suite, Nicole was standing by the mirror. Cheryl was adjusting the veil, her hands moving with practiced ease. They were laughing about something I hadn't heard, an inside joke I wasn't part of. Nicole turned when she heard me, and her smile dimmed just slightly. "Oh, Mom, you're here. Actually, Cheryl already helped with everything, but thanks." I stood in the doorway, holding the small gift bag I'd brought. It was a framed photo of Nicole at 8 years old, holding a handmade card that said, "World's Best Mom." She had made it in art class, gluing pieces of dried macaroni around a cheap wooden frame. Inside was a photo of the two of us at the beach, both smiling, both happy. And in her wobbly handwriting, she had written on the back, "World's Best Mom, I love you forever." I had planned to give it to her this morning, a reminder of who we used to be. But looking at her now, surrounded by Cheryl's world, I knew it wouldn't matter. I set the bag on a chair and said, "I'll see you at the ceremony." Nicole nodded, already turning back to the mirror, and I left without another word. The ceremony was perfect, at least from the outside. Nicole walked down the aisle in a dress I had paid for, wearing a necklace Cheryl had lent her. I sat in the third row, tucked into the corner near the aisle. Cheryl sat in the front row, next to Robert and the groom's parents. She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, playing the role of the proud mother. I cried too, but no one saw, because no one was looking at me. The officiant spoke about love and commitment, about the bond between families. I wanted to believe that I was part of that bond, that I still had a place in Nicole's life. But as I watched Cheryl lean over and whisper something to Robert, as I watched them both smile and nod, I knew the truth. I was a guest at my own daughter's wedding, nothing more. After the vows, the guests moved to the reception hall, a grand room with round tables and towering floral centerpieces. I walked in alone, my heels clicking against the marble, and looked for my name card. The reception hall was stunning. White linens, towering centerpieces, crystal glassware, catching the light from the chandeliers. I walked in slowly, looking for the head table. It was at the front of the room, elevated slightly, draped in gold fabric. A staff member in a black vest approached me with a polite smile. "Mrs. Brennan, let me show you to your seat." I followed him, expecting to be led to the head table. But he kept walking, past the front, past the second row of tables, all the way to the back corner. He stopped at a small table near the kitchen entrance. "Here you are," he said, gesturing to a place card with my name on it. I stared at it, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm the mother of the bride." The staff member pulled out a clipboard, scanning the seating chart. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the chart was updated this morning. Your name is listed here." I looked across the room at the head table. From where I stood, I could see the place cards lined up in their gold frames. I couldn't read them from this distance, but I didn't need to. I walked toward the head table, my heels clicking on the marble floor. Cheryl was already seated, laughing with Robert, adjusting the napkin on her lap. I stopped a few feet away and looked at the place card in front of her chair. Cheryl Brennan, mother of the bride. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. 200 people were filing into the room, taking their seats, chatting and laughing. And I was standing in the middle of it all, invisible. I felt like I was watching myself from a distance, a stranger in my own daughter's life. My hands trembled as I set my purse on the table, and my vision blurred, not from tears, but from the sheer wrongness of it all. I thought about every sacrifice I had made, the late nights balancing the books, the second jobs, the decisions I made alone because there was no one else to make them. And I realized I had spent 28 years earning a seat at the table, but you can't earn what someone refuses to give. I sat there for 10 minutes, watching Cheryl toast with champagne, watching Nicole smile and laugh. Around me, 200 guests were chatting, laughing, taking photos. No one noticed that the woman who had paid for everything was being seated like a distant relative. The couple next to me smiled and asked, "How do you know the bride?" I looked at them, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I'm her mother." The woman blinked, surprised, and glanced toward the head table. "Oh, I thought that was Cheryl." I didn't respond, because anything I said would crack the careful composure I was holding together. Then I stood up, walked over to where Nicole was posing for photos, and tapped her shoulder. She turned, her smile bright and wide, until she saw my face. "Mom, what's wrong?" I kept my voice low, but every word was clear. "Why am I sitting in the corner, Nicole?" Her eyes darted to the guests around us, and she lowered her voice to match mine. "Mom, not here. Please. Here, now. I paid $85,000 for this wedding, and you put me in the back?" Her face flushed, and she glanced at Cheryl, who was watching us from the head table. "Mom, Cheryl worked so hard on the planning. It made sense for her to sit with the family." I stared at my daughter, searching for the girl who used to make me cards out of construction paper, the one who told me I was the best mom in the world. But she wasn't there anymore. "I am your family, Nicole." She bit her lip, tears welling up in her eyes, but they weren't for me. "Why are you doing this? It's my wedding day." I took a breath, and for the first time in years, I stopped trying to fix things. "You're right. It is your day, the day I gave you. Enjoy it." I turned and walked toward the exit, my back straight, my head high. Behind me, I heard Nicole call my name, but I didn't stop. 200 people watched me leave, and I didn't care. I will not cry here, I thought. Not in front of them. I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands resting on the steering wheel. The engine was running, the air conditioning blowing cool air across my face. Outside, the parking lot was empty. Everyone was still inside, celebrating. I wasn't crying, not anymore, because something inside me had shifted. For 28 years, I had been Nicole's mother, and I had given her everything. The money, the time, the endless second chances. And in return, she had put me in a corner and told me not to make a scene. Running 3 properties taught me one thing. Emotion has no place in decisions that matter. You assess, you act, and you don't look back. I pulled out my phone and made the first call. My trust attorney answered on the second ring. Mr. Harrison, this is Diane Brennan. I need you to remove Nicole from the trust fund immediately. There was a pause, then his careful, professional voice. Mrs. Brennan, that's a significant change. Are you certain? Completely. Redirect everything to charity. I'll sign the paperwork on Monday. Most people don't realize that a trust isn't like a will. It doesn't need to wait for probate. My parents had set it up decades ago, with me as the trustee and Nicole as the sole beneficiary. But here's the thing about trusts. As long as you're alive and named as the trustee, you can change the terms. No court approval needed. No waiting period. Just a phone call to your attorney, a signature on new documents, and it's done. I had always thought of the trust as something fixed, something that would automatically go to Nicole when I passed. But Mr. Harrison had explained it to me years ago. You're in control until the day you're not. And today, I was still in control. Understood. I'll have the documents ready, he said. I hung up and stared at the phone for a moment, my heart pounding. Then I made the second call, to my financial advisor. Carol, I need you to stop all financial support to Nicole. Everything. Carol had managed my accounts for 15 years, and she knew better than to ask questions. The property inheritance as well? Yes. Change the beneficiaries to charity. I'll prepare the paperwork. Are you sure about this, Diane? I thought about the seat in the corner, the necklace Nicole didn't want, the 28 years of being taken for granted. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. When I hung up, the car was silent except for the hum of the engine. I sat there for another minute, letting the weight of what I had done settle over me. I hung up the phone and set it on the passenger seat. The car was silent except for the hum of the engine, the faint buzz of the air conditioning. I sat there for a long moment, my hands resting on the steering wheel, my eyes closed. I waited for the guilt to come, the voice in my head that would tell me I was being cruel, that I was overreacting. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. The kind of relief you feel when you finally set down something you've been carrying for too long. I thought about the trust fund, the millions of dollars that Nicole had been counting on. I thought about her face when she found out it was gone, the shock, the anger, the disbelief. And I realized she had never valued it. Not really. Because if she had, she wouldn't have treated me the way she did. I opened my eyes and looked at the venue in my rearview mirror. The lights were warm, golden, inviting. But I didn't belong there. I never had. I put the car in drive and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the wedding and Nicole behind. It wasn't revenge, not really, because I wasn't trying to hurt Nicole. I was simply drawing a line, the way I should have done years ago. The next morning, my phone rang at 9. It was Nicole, her voice frantic and high-pitched. Mom, what did you do? Dad said you called your lawyer. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. I made some changes to my estate plan. It's my right. Mom, you can't just cut me out of everything. Her voice cracked, and I could hear the panic underneath. For the first time, she was realizing that my support wasn't guaranteed. I can, Nicole. And I did. But why? Because of the seating? Mom, that was Cheryl's idea. I set the coffee cup down, my hand steady. Don't blame Cheryl. You made the choice. You chose her over me. There was silence on the other end, broken only by her ragged breathing. Nicole, listen carefully, I said, my voice calm. Everything I gave you, the tuition, the car, the apartment down payment, the wedding, those were gifts, not loans, not obligations, gifts. But I thought, you thought wrong. In this state, gifts from parent to adult child are legally considered separate property. There's no contract, no repayment clause, and more importantly, there's no obligation for me to continue. Silence. The trust was set up by my parents with me as the trustee. That means I decide who benefits, and I've decided it's not you. Mom, I'm sorry. Please, we can fix this. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I almost gave in. But then I thought about the corner seat, the discarded necklace, the years of being invisible. Some things can't be fixed, Nicole. I'm sorry it took me this long to see that. I hung up before she could respond. That evening, my friend Trish came over with a bottle of wine. She poured us each a glass and looked at me across the table. Are you okay? I took a sip and nodded. I'm better than I've been in years. Trish raised her glass. To finally putting yourself first. We clinked glasses, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. 6 months later, I was sitting in a cafe in Florence, watching the sunset over the Arno River. I had always wanted to travel, but there was always something more important. Nicole's college tuition, her car, her wedding. Now, for the first time in my life, I was doing something just for me. The trip had been spontaneous, booked on a Tuesday afternoon when I realized I had no obligations. No one to check in with, no one to ask permission from, just me, a suitcase, and a plane ticket. I spent my days wandering through museums, eating at small trattorias, and sitting in gardens. At night, I wrote in a journal I had bought at a bookstore in Rome. The entries weren't long, just a few lines each day. But they were mine, and that was enough. When I returned home, I started volunteering with a charity that helped women after divorce. The trust fund I had redirected was now funding scholarships and legal aid. Every month, I received letters from women who had been given a second chance. One letter stood out. Dear Mrs. Brennan, I was trapped in a relationship where I felt invisible. Your scholarship gave me the resources to leave and start over. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. It felt better than any thank you Nicole had ever given me. One afternoon, a year after the wedding, I found a letter in my mailbox. It was from Nicole, handwritten on cream-colored stationery. Mom, it's been a year. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. Can we talk? I read it once, folded it carefully, and placed it in a drawer. I didn't write back because there was nothing left to say. Some bridges, once burned, aren't meant to be rebuilt. That evening, I sat in my backyard, surrounded by the rose garden my mother had planted. The flowers bloomed every year, constant and dependable, just like she had been. It was late afternoon, the kind of golden hour when everything looks softer. The roses were in full bloom, deep reds, pale pinks, whites that glowed in the fading light. A light breeze carried the scent of earth and petals, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear a neighbor mowing their lawn. I opened the journal I had started in Florence, the one I had filled with thoughts I'd never shared with anyone. The pen moved easily across the page, and for the first time in years, I wasn't writing for anyone but myself. I wrote, My name is Diane Brennan. I'm 62 years old. For 28 years, I was Nicole's mother. I gave her everything, and she gave me nothing. But I'm not angry anymore. I'm free. This is not an ending. This is my beginning. I closed the journal and set it on the bench beside me. One of the roses had dropped a petal, and I picked it up, holding it between my fingers. It was soft, fragile, imperfect, just like my mother's love had been, just like mine should have been valued. I looked up at the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. Tomorrow would be another beautiful day, a day that belonged only to me. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Have you experienced something similar? What does family really mean to you? If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe. Your support helps me keep sharing these stories, and I truly appreciate every single one of you. Thank you for being here.